we're going to be talking with Sherry Jackson, certified public accountant. She once worked with the IRS. She's going to tell us about this and some other things on Coast to Coast AM. Sherry Jackson, certified public accountant. She used to be with the Internal Revenue Service. Mrs. Jackson investigated fraud and embezzlement, helped prosecute bribery suspects, and managed special investigation projects. We're going to keep her this hour to talk about the IRS. Sherry, welcome to the program. How are you?
Great, George. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Lots of people have been sending me emails over the last several weeks, too, because of our real strong interest in this Ed and Elaine Brown case and the Tom Cryer case as well. Give me your reaction, first of all, Sherry, to the Ed and Elaine Brown case. Have you been looking at it?
Yeah, and, it's been going on for a while, and unfortunately, when Ed decided that he was going to represent himself, he was not allowed to represent himself. He was not allowed to face his accuser and give the jury the information that they needed to know to understand why he did what he did. So he decided that he was not going to put up with that, and he walked out.
Yeah, he should have gotten some great, attorney recommendations on this one, huh?
That's possible. It's a shame that when evidence isn't freely, when the jury's not allowed to see the evidence, then they have a skewed view of the person that's being charged, and that's happening a lot, and that's unfortunate.
Sherry, tell us a little bit about your duties with the Internal Revenue Service, and over what period of time were you with them?
I was an Internal Revenue agent from 1988 to 1995. When I started out, I was auditing individuals, people that had jobs or small companies, and as I progressed, I started adding corporations and partnerships to that. Some of the special investigation projects that I had was I had to audit ministers my last 2.5 years at the IRS, and something that was loosely called the Preacher Project. The IRS decided that they wanted to audit ministers because they couldn't get to the church because of the so-called separation of church and state, but they could get to the minister, and they were hearing that ministers were, making a whole bunch of money and calling it love offerings, so they wanted to get into that.
Were you disillusioned with the IRS?
Well, actually, no. When I left the IRS, I wasn't aware of the fraud. I left the IRS for family reasons. I'm one of those hardline Christian women that realized that at some point or another they were getting more time than my family. Being a Gestapo queen was taking up my family time as a wife and mother. Then, my priorities were not right. So I left the IRS to come home and be June Cleaver.
Okay. Then at what point did you start looking into the tax law or the lack of it? And when did you start saying to yourself, there's something wrong here?
Well, I left in 95, and around 98, I started hearing from random people that the income tax didn't apply to us or the income tax was a fraud. I didn't do anything about it. I just made a mental note that there were some people out there that believed that we're not liable for the income tax. However, in 2000, I got a barrage of people with that information. Thank God for the Internet. There's some bad stuff on it, but there's some really good stuff on there, and it started getting around. So in July of 2000, somebody alerted me to the We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education ad that was in the USA Today. That was July 7th, 2000, and I got the USA Today, and there was a big full-page ad, and there it said, Dear We the People, the income tax is a fraud. And if you file, you waive your Fifth Amendment rights. So I read this article, and it was a credible body of evidence with some websites and everything in it. And the thing that really struck me was a $50,000 reward offered by William Conklin for someone to prove that we had to file and pay. So at this point, a lot of ministers had started coming to me saying that their congregants were saying that the income tax was a fraud. So I took the challenge because I wanted to put this baby to bed. I said, I'm going to win this reward. I'm going to give my tithes and offerings, pay off my husband's car that I just bought him, and have a little bit left over for some kind of savings. And I wanted to look after it. That's what started it, actually. That's what got me out of my chair, out of my comfort zone chair, to go ahead and do the research. And as the more I researched, the more I found out that, there's a tangled web that's here and that we can't find in the liability statutes.
Well, did he write the check? Did you get it?
I did not win because I did not find the law that requires most Americans to file an income tax return and pay the income tax.
Okay. While you were with the IRS as an examiner, did anybody who you examined say to you, Miss Jackson, there's no law. I mean, we don't have to pay the tax. I mean, did anybody ever say that to you? Did you ever get to a point when you were working for the IRS that you said, hey, there could be something wrong here?
No. The 7.5 years I was there, that did not happen. From what I understand, the IRS took people that they call tax protesters, and they were examined in another special group. No one ever came up to me with any of that information because I feel like based on, my background, if they had, I would have done the research while I was there, just as Joe Bannister did. He was still there, and John Turner. They were still there when they were told about this, and they did the research. No, I did not come across any of these people.
Okay, so here you are, former IRS examiner, and you're saying right now on this network radio show, you can't find the law that shows that Americans have to pay federal tax.
Right. I mean, there's things on the surface, and everybody wants to look at the surface. But when you look deep in there and you see a whole bunch of legalese and you sift through that information, you'll find that non-resident aliens and foreign corporations, for the privilege of working here in the States, have to pay the income tax. There is so many ties into that, and it all ends up in the same place.
Sherry, has this created a problem for you at all? Because now that you're so vocal about this and you've got the credibility, I've got to tell you, I feel very sorry for Ed and Elaine Brown because I think they may be right. And now, the fact that they've lost their home and everything's been confiscated and they're in jail somewhere, it's a bad situation. But they don't have the credibility that you do. They were, just like all of us Americans who file our tax returns, pay our taxes. You are an IRS examiner, and you're saying, I can't find the law here. Has this created a problem for you?
Yes, it has created a problem for me because evidently they don't like me being vocal. In July of 2004, at 7:45 in the morning, I had 15 to 20 armed agents invade and raid my home. I have been asking respectfully, along with thousands of other people, for the IRS to show us the law that requires us to file and pay. And as opposed to getting any kind of answers, they raid my home at gunpoint. Me and my family are herded into one room. They take all my DVDs, my CDs, my tax research, my financial records, and they left. And this was July of 2004. All
right, that's 3 years ago. What's happened?
Well, the affidavit of probable cause that was used to allow the judge to sign off on the raid was sealed all those years, so we did not have that witness against me. We could not see what they wrote for the judge to get into the house, but when it was unsealed this April, when they decided to charge me formally, basically it said that she's been speaking here, there, and yonder, and we're going to find conspiracy when we go into her house, and she's speaking here and there, and she's doing all this speaking. So it was basically a whole bunch of First Amendment information in there. They did not come in here and find anything but a strong-willed Christian family. Therefore, all they have is willful failure to file as a charge, which everybody in the world, especially if you saw the movie Freedom to Fascism, everybody knew already.
Oh, yeah.
That
late Aaron Russo. So you're not filing taxes or tax returns now. Is that true? The last time
I filed was 1999. Once I did this research, I decided not to be an informed slave. I decided to get off the plantation. These are my resources, and they belong to me and my family. They do not belong to the Federal Reserve, which is the non-auditable private banking cartel that collects over $30 million an hour from the American people. That's where the tax dollars go. They don't go towards the roads. That's the gas tax. They don't go towards the police and firemen. That's your ad valorem tax and your real estate tax. People in the United States need to turn off the TV, that thing that we call the electronic income reducer, and they need to study the law, the Constitution, and figure out what's going on and stop listening to other people. Don't even listen to me. Go study for yourself. But you got to turn off the TV. You got to put the golf clubs down for a little while and do this.
So where do we stand right now then, Sherry? You're not recommending to every American don't pay your taxes, or are you?
I never tell people to file or not to file. I never tell people to pay or not to pay. What I tell people to do, sit down, do the research, not just the surface research, but do the research. Look at what others have found, look on the IRS website, and then when they see that there is no law that requires us to file and pay, then they can decide whether to be an informed slave or get off the plantation.
Now, if somebody's working for a company and they're withholding taxes from this individual,